When the powerful alpha found out about his secret. Taekook fanfiction. Boy x boy love story. If you are homophobic, please simply click off this video. For Taekook supporters, let's start. The capital of South Korea buzzed with energy, but no place carried more prestige or intimidation than Seoul Royal Academy, the nation's most renowned university for alphas. It wasn't just an academic institution, it was a fortress of strength, pride and bloodlines. Only the most powerful alpha males were allowed to enter, making it both a training ground and battlefield for dominance, leadership and influence. And into this fortress of steel and pride stepped Kim Taehyung. Taehyung had always been different. Blessed, or cursed, with beauty that could silence a room, his delicate features made him look almost too perfect. A pair of soulful blue eyes framed by thick lashes, lips soft as rose petals, and skin pale and smooth. He was tall for an omega, with a lean, graceful body that carried both elegance and vulnerability. But behind that ethereal beauty hid a secret. He was an omega. For Taehyung, life as an omega had always been a cage. People admired him, but only as a possession, a prize to be courted, protected, or claimed. No one believed omegas could dream big, let alone pursue studies in a university built exclusively for alphas. Yet Taehyung's dream was stubborn. He longed to study to be a doctor at Seoul Royal Academy, not because it was prestigious, but because it was the best. And Taehyung wanted to prove to the world and to himself that his worth wasn't limited by biology. So he did what no omega had ever dared. He disguised himself as an alpha. A combination of scent blockers and hormone suppressants masked his true nature. A drop of artificial alpha pheromones completed the illusion. On the surface, Taehyung was just another new alpha applicant. Inside, his heart hammered at the risk he was taking, because if anyone discovered his truth, he could lose everything. The university was ruled unofficially by one man, Jungkook. The strongest alpha of his generation, Jungkook was the son of a powerful business family with deep roots in politics. He wasn't just strong, he was brilliant, athletic, and unshakably confident. With dark eyes that burned with authority, a sharp jawline, and a body honed like a weapon, Jungkook embodied everything the academy valued in an alpha: power, dominance, and command. Other alphas respected him. Some envied him. A few feared him. And now, fate was about to place Taehyung directly in his path. Taehyung clutched the strap of his leather bag tightly as he approached the towering iron gates of the academy. His palms were damp despite the cool morning air. Alphas walked in pairs and groups, radiating strength and pride, their pheromones thick in the air like waves of dominance. Taehyung's scent blockers worked, but the atmosphere suffocated him nonetheless. He forced his back straight, chin slightly lifted, walking with the quiet elegance of someone who had nothing to prove. If he let himself look weak, they would pounce. Inside the administration building, the air smelled faintly of polished wood and leather. A long line of students waited to register. Taehyung adjusted his scarf subtly, ensuring the inhibitor patch hidden on his neck stayed covered. When his turn came, the dean himself sat behind the oak desk. Dean Min, an older alpha with sharp features, peered at him through wire-rimmed glasses. "Name?" the dean asked, voice clipped. "Kim Taehyung," he replied softly, then corrected himself, deepening his tone a fraction to sound more alpha-like. The dean's pen paused over the paper. His eyes lifted, scanning Taehyung slowly. He frowned. "You don't smell like the others," Dean Min muttered. His gaze narrowed, almost suspicious. "Most alphas reek of aggression their first day. You, however, your scent is faint." Taehyung's pulse raced. He forced a calm smile. "I've been using suppressants for years, sir. My family doesn't tolerate unnecessary displays of dominance. They preferred discipline over scent marking. The dean raised an eyebrow, clearly not convinced, but after a tense moment, he nodded. Interesting family. Fine. You may proceed. But remember, this place will strip you to your core. If there's anything you're hiding, the academy will expose it sooner or later. Taehyung bowed politely, murmuring, understood. Leaving the office, Taehyung nearly collided with a tall figure striding down the hall. Jungkook. The alpha's presence was overwhelming up close. Broad shoulders under a fitted blazer, dark hair falling slightly into his eyes, and a stare sharp enough to cut through glass. Jungkook's pheromones were subtle but powerful, like an unspoken command that bent the air around him. Watch it, Jungkook said curtly, though his voice was deep and smooth like velvet laced with steel. Taehyung lowered his head in apology, forcing his heartbeat to calm. My apologies. But when he lifted his gaze, Jungkook was still staring at him. Not with disdain, but with something sharper, curiosity. For a moment, Jungkook's nose twitched, as if trying to catch a scent that wasn't there. Taehyung's breath froze in his chest. New student? Jungkook asked, tilting his head slightly. Yes, Taehyung replied evenly, hiding the tremor in his voice. Jungkook's eyes lingered on him for a heartbeat longer, dark and unreadable. Then he smirked faintly. Don't fall behind. This place eats the weak alive. With that, he brushed past Taehyung, leaving the Omega standing still, pulse racing. It was only the first day and already Taehyung felt it. Jungkook was dangerous. And sooner or later his secret would be tested. The first day of classes at Seoul Royal Academy was nothing short of brutal. The academy wasn't designed to nurture, it was built to test. Every lecture hall felt like an arena, filled with dominant pheromones pressing against one another like invisible weapons. Alphas asserted themselves without even speaking, their scents thick in the air, heavy with arrogance and unspoken challenges. For Taehyung it was suffocating. He sat near the back of his first lecture hall. His notebook open, pen poised. The scent blockers clung desperately to his skin, masking the sweetness of his Omega pheromones with a faint edge of synthetic alpha musk. It was convincing enough to pass casual interactions. But here, among dozens of real alphas, Taehyung felt the difference like a splinter under his skin. Every time an alpha laughed too loud, slammed a hand on a desk, or leaned too close, Taehyung's instincts screamed at him to shrink back. But he couldn't. He forced his shoulders square, his expression calm. He wasn't Kim Taehyung, the delicate Omega, anymore. Here he was Taehyung the alpha, disciplined, reserved, untouchable. Halfway through the lecture, one of the louder alphas turned his attention to him. Hey new guy, the alpha smirked, leaning over the row. His scent rolled out like smoke, aggressive and sharp. You don't smell right. What pack are you from? Several heads turned, eyes glittering with curiosity. Alphas thrived on hierarchy, and the fastest way to establish it was to sniff out the weakest. Taehyung's throat went dry. Independent, he replied coolly, keeping his voice low and even. The alpha scoffed. Independent? So no backing, huh? Thought so. That's why your scent's so weak. You hiding something. A few others chuckled, leaning in. The pressure of pheromones intensified, pressing against Taehyung's mask like a storm against fragile glass. Before Taehyung could respond, a new voice cut sharply across the room. Enough. The entire hall fell silent. At the front row, Jungkook had turned his head slightly, eyes narrowed at the instigating alpha. His voice wasn't raised, but it carried the kind of weight that brooked no argument. The alpha who had been taunting Taehyung clenched his jaw, then sat back, muttering under his breath. Jungkook's gaze lingered a second longer before sliding, slow, deliberate, toward Taehyung. For a fraction of a moment their eyes met. Jungkook's stare was sharp, unreadable, like a predator assessing unfamiliar prey. Taehyung's pen pressed too hard against the paper, leaving a blot of ink. He forced himself to look away, feigning focus on the lecture. But his heart was racing. After class, the alphas spilled into the courtyard, laughing, shoving one another, and sparking dominance games that made the air reek with pheromones. Taehyung kept to the edges, avoiding the center of the storm. He tugged his scarf higher around his neck, aware of how vulnerable the inhibitor patch was beneath it. One wrong move, one slip of fabric, and everything would unravel. Kim Taehyung. The voice was low, smooth, commanding. He turned, pulse spiking. Jungkook stood there, hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. Up close, the alpha's presence was overwhelming, strength and confidence radiating off him like a second skin. Taehyung swallowed. Yes. You handled yourself well, Jungkook said simply. His eyes flicked to the group of alphas still wrestling in the distance. Most new students get eaten alive on their first day. Taehyung forced a small smile. I'm used to discipline. Discipline, Jungkook repeated as if tasting the word. His gaze sharpened. But not dominance. Taehyung's breath hitched. Excuse me? Jungkook tilted his head, studying him in a way that made Taehyung's skin prickle. You don't react like the others. They throw pheromones and you don't push back. You don't even flinch. That's not normal for an alpha. Taehyung's grip tightened on his bag strap. Maybe I'm just not interested in childish games. A faint smirk tugged at Jungkook's lips, though his eyes remained piercing. Maybe. Or maybe you're hiding something. The word struck like a blade too close to his chest. Before Taehyung could respond, Jungkook stepped back, his gaze lingering one last moment. Either way, he said quietly, I'll figure it out. Then he turned, walking away with the calm certainty of someone who always got what he wanted. Taehyung exhaled shakily once Jungkook was gone, his hand brushing the edge of his scarf where the inhibitor patch lay hidden. He had survived the first day. But Jungkook's suspicion wasn't something he could block with a patch or hide behind practiced composure. Jungkook was watching him. And Taehyung knew. It was only a matter of time before the most powerful alpha in the academy uncovered the truth. The academy wasted no time. On only the second day, the first-year alphas were ordered to the training arena, a massive stone courtyard surrounded by high walls, echoing with the sound of clashing bodies and grunts of exertion. This was where reputations were built or destroyed, where the weak were exposed and the strong rose to command. Taehyung stood at the edge of the crowd, adjusting his gloves as he surveyed the arena. His stomach twisted in knots. He had prepared for lectures, debates, even the heavy air of alpha pheromones. But sparring? Physical dominance? That was dangerous. Too dangerous. As an Omega, his body was lithe and graceful, but not built to overpower hulking alphas who lived for combat. His scent blockers could hide his pheromones, but they couldn't give him alpha strength. Still, he couldn't afford to falter. If he lost too easily, questions would arise. A grizzled instructor barked at the group, his voice carrying across the courtyard. Listen up. Today we test your instinct. No weapons, no excuses. Alphas who can't dominate in combat don't belong here. Pair off, let's see what you're made of. Pairs formed quickly, the air thick with anticipation. Taehyung felt a bead of sweat at his temple. If he could find a weaker alpha, perhaps he could get through this without too much notice. But fate had other plans. Jungkook. The instructor's voice rang out and Taehyung's chest tightened. You'll spar first. Pick your opponent. A hush fell over the courtyard. All eyes turned to Jungkook, who stood tall, calm, hands in his pockets as if none of this mattered to him. His dark gaze swept over the gathered alphas. Then it landed, like a strike, on Taehyung. You. Taehyung froze. Me? Jungkook's lips curled in the faintest smirk. Yes. You. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The strongest alpha choosing the quiet newcomer? It was unthinkable. The instructor barked for them to step forward. Taehyung moved into the arena, every nerve screaming. His heart pounded not just with fear, but with the awareness that Jungkook's eyes never left him. They faced each other. Jungkook loosened his blazer, tossing it aside, revealing the sharp lines of his body beneath the thin shirt. His muscles shifted fluidly, honed and powerful. Don't hold back, Jungkook said, his voice low enough for only Taehyung to hear. Taehyung swallowed. If only you knew. The instructor's shout rang out. Begin. Jungkook lunged first, faster than Taehyung had anticipated. Taehyung dodged by instinct, his body moving gracefully out of reach. The crowd gasped. Jungkook's brows lifted slightly. Not bad. The alpha struck again, precise and controlled, but Taehyung twisted, slipping just beyond his grasp. His movements weren't alpha strong. They were omega fluid, a dancer's grace. The more Jungkook pressed, the more it showed. To the crowd, it looked like Taehyung was slippery, evasive, relying on agility instead of raw power. To Jungkook it looked like something else. Something different. Finally Jungkook changed tactics. Instead of striking, he feinted, then caught Taehyung's wrist, yanking him forward and pinning him easily against his chest. The crowd roared, but Jungkook barely noticed them. Because in that moment, with Taehyung's body pressed against his own, something hit him. A faint trace. Not strong, not clear, but there. Sweet, warm, dangerously alluring. Pheromones. Jungkook's eyes darkened as his grip tightened ever so slightly. His alpha instincts stirred, whispering that this wasn't another alpha he held in his arms. This was, no, impossible. Taehyung froze, wide-eyed, pulse racing in his throat. The inhibitor patch on his neck burned under the heat of Jungkook's closeness. Had the block slipped just for a second? The instructor's voice cut through. Winner, Jungkook. The spell broke. Jungkook released him abruptly, stepping back. Taehyung stumbled but quickly composed himself, bowing slightly to hide his trembling. The crowd muttered with admiration for Jungkook, and curiosity about Taehyung's unfamiliar style. But Jungkook wasn't listening. His gaze was fixed on Taehyung, sharp and calculating. As the spar ended and the students dismissed, Jungkook caught Taehyung's arm before he could escape. Their faces were close, too close. You move like no alpha I've ever seen, Jungkook murmured, his tone low and dangerous. And for a moment, just now, his eyes narrowed. I smelled something that shouldn't be there. Taehyung's throat went dry. You're imagining things. Jungkook's lips curved, not in amusement but in challenge. Maybe. Or maybe you're lying. His hand released Taehyung, but his gaze lingered, heavy and knowing. Be careful, Kim Taehyung. Secrets don't last long here. With that, Jungkook turned and walked away, leaving Taehyung standing in the middle of the courtyard, trembling, not from defeat, but from the terrifying realization that the strongest alpha in the academy was already circling closer to the truth. To be continued. Hope you enjoyed part 1 of this intensifying Taekook love story. Please stay tuned, part 2 to come soon. Thank you for watching.